This episode is sponsored by Alberta Blue Cross and was created to help inspire discussions around the importance of taking care of your health, whether it be mental, physical, social, or even financial. We are proud to provide our Socality House team members with Alberta Blue Cross employee health benefits to help them live their best lives. Welcome to the Socality Show. My name is Scott Backen with Socality, and I'm so excited about today's conversation. It is going to be a good one. But before we dive into the conversation, let me introduce this incredible panel we have with us. First of all, Jay McDonald. There he is, a colorblind commercial photographer and co-founder of Rome Creative, a Western Canadian-based film production and commercial photography studio. Jay is a product of Socality and the original Alpine Daddy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Don't you ever forget it.
Whoa. Okay. We got Levi Washington with us, business management by day, author, poet, and TikToking head by night, who focuses on self-awareness, self-improvement, and redefining love. It is so good to have you here. When I look at you, I just see your TikTok. No. That's how you start all your TikToks.
No. Yeah. I had a trend for a bit of that.
It was
I did like 40 videos straight.
You don't do it anymore?
No.
No.
My CEO of No Phase ended, but I think a lot of people need to learn how to say that word. That's why I used it a lot.
It would just start like, no. It would just come at you, Levi.
I'm going to CEO of No Face.
The CEO of No.
That's what they started calling me. There's a hashtag for it and everything.
Really? The CEO of No?
Yeah.
That is you. All right. And we have Rihanna Lauren, also known as Cadence, is the founder of People of Pearls, Queendam, and Area.
Area.
Okay.
It's not English. Fair enough.
It's not English. I'm sorry, but yes. Welcome here. And she is biracial, multilingual artist, songwriter, community activator, and event and multimedia producer born, raised in Calgary. You are passionate about cross-cultural learning, bringing people together for unforgettable memories, and empowering excellent art. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It is great to have you here. All right, guys, we are going to have a hot and heavy tonight. We're gonna
it's that podcast. I came unprepared
and heavy.
Hot and heavy. We're talking about anxiety, stress, things that, in our world, our creator world. And I think there's a lot of stigma around this topic, and I have my own personal journey of how I've walked through this. Maybe we can even tap on a little bit of depression. Obviously, we're not psychologists. We're not here to diagnose and anything. I think all we can do is talk from personal experience, maybe some knowledge we've learned along the way. I think about how we've coped, overcome, still dealing with, and obviously different levels. Everyone's in a different level of, on their journey of wherever they're at in life. And, when I was younger, I was like, I was pretty happy-go-lucky, and then all of a sudden I saw things inside of me, my mindset, and things crumbling and things kind of breaking down, and all of a sudden I found myself in a crazy state of major anxiety, panic attacks, all that stuff. I've now not really talked about it publicly, but I've talked to it with close friends and worked through it, and still dealing with it. So I think it's an important topic. And the first thing that came into my mind when I was going through it was a stigma. Like, people automatically think something's wrong with them, or they're alone in this, like something's wrong with you, that you should not be like this. Why aren't you happy? Or why aren't you, or just get over it. Just choose to know, just choose. It's like, you think I'm choosing to have panic attacks? You think I want this right now at 2 a.m? Like,
I do sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like a good
Spice
panic attack,
evening.
But anyway, all these things, I think it's healthy to talk about. And one of my big things is I want to break the stigma and the shame around this topic, especially because the more I've talked about it, the more I've seen it's touched so many people, and it's a real thing, and on different levels, right? I was telling a friend one time about my personal journey. He's like, maybe I don't have anxiety, because my story was like so crazy.
That dude sucks.
Yeah, he's like, maybe I didn't, because he was talking about anxiety. I'm like, me too. And I was like listing all these things. He's like, maybe I didn't have it. But to your point earlier, you were saying, everyone's got a different level of what they view as anxiety or stress or even depression. I would say I've never been depressed, but I definitely have gone through a lot of anxiety and stress. So, and I think it is categorized probably in that. Depression, they say, comes from like buried emotions, and you know what I mean, like buried anger or buried emotions, and it all of a sudden manifests itself, slowly. It's not like one day. It's just like, I'm depressed. It's like happens over time. And that was the same with my anxiety journey. It was over time. So yeah, so we want to talk, I think we're going to talk for a while about this, about anxiety. Maybe I want to hear some of your guys' stories about things that happened in your life and maybe how it all kind of came caving down or breaking down and came to light. And how did you deal with it? And go through a little bit of that, and then help our listeners maybe realize they're not alone. I think that's the most important thing, is realizing you are not alone. Whatever you're going through in your journey right now, we want to encourage you to find some help, talk about it, and you are okay. I think that's the biggest thing too, is you are okay. And so, so let's go. You ready to dive in? You're holding the mic for this now. We were talking in stands, and now you're holding the mic.
Yeah.
You've gone all Oprah on us.
Is that what she does?
She holds the mic.
Oh,
she did on her show.
Well,
is that what she does?
I know that you invited us to challenge and not agree with each other always.
Right.
Yeah. It's not really I guess like I would suggest that it's also okay if someone's not okay. You might not be okay. You might actually be like really
that's
ill
good.
and like need help.
Yes.
Like,
okay.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So
okay. Yes.
That's something I would say. I mean,
well, I guess I was trying to say you're normal.
I mean,
maybe you're not normal.
I know what you mean.
Okay, you know what I mean.
I would endorse that on LinkedIn.
the heart of what I'm hearing you say, the heart of what I'm hearing you say is,
and obviously we're not therapists, so you might want to
disclaimer,
seek help, get a professional to diagnose
but
you.
I think,
yes,
I guess for my journey, admitting when I'm not okay has been so healing, which is why I bring that up. And but I do hear the heart of what you were saying. What I was hearing and knowing you was basically that you're not alone.
Yes,
and like
thank you.
There's hope kind of thing.
Yep.
But it's okay if you're not okay. And if you don't feel okay, I think for me, I mean, it's interesting because we exist in a world with billions. There's billions of people on Earth.
Yeah, I think we just hit 8
not
billion.
trillions.
No, I think we just hit 8 billion.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good job to that last one.
Yeah. Well done.
You Trojan sales.
You win a prize.
So there's billions of humans on Earth, and some people feel like, I think for a lot of people there is a stigma, and for a lot of people there's not. Like sometimes because I'm like well aware of my like issues and mess that I've been like exploring for years, and I'm grateful to have some friendships where I can a lot of friendships where I can be open and be messy. And so sometimes I forget that there is still a stigma. I'm like, what? Oh yeah. I'm like,
Did you work through it?
Well, not even work through, just like I think part of it is like the millennial, like the Gen Zs are gonna be all right, because the Gen Zs.
You think so? TikTok, if you're listening, you're gonna be okay.
What I appreciate about the Gen Zs is and I cannot say if there's stigma. I'm just saying, like, there has been a big movement in the last few years,
right, an awakening
towards talking about this, right?
That's
like
right.
For me to sit here and be like, I have a therapist, I'm like, there's no, like, I'm just.
Yes, I find as I'm talking to some,
but
everyone's got a therapist now.
Dude, I swear to God, my therapist looked me in the face and made a joke about me paying for her deck renovation. I was like, if that's not going to bring me back next week, I don't know what is.
So Jay has a trying to share.
Do you have a therapist?
And he goes a lot.
I do, and I will give a quick. And I think this is going to be one where I want to recognize that in this conversation, like the people that we are really matters. So I am a woman. I have been encouraged to talk about my feelings likely more than you 3 men have in your life, and that's very real. And at the same time, I'm a woman of color. I'm a Black woman. So I don't know Levi's experience, but my and Levi's experience might have been different than your guys' experience. And you're like, all of our different things matter. Like, okay, you're this. And so, like, you know what I mean? We're all going to speak from that place. So while maybe there has been movement for people in general or millennials to talk more about therapy, I do think that some men would maybe be less forward. And I know that, men of certain ethnicities would be less forward about it. But yes, I recently got a therapist again. I do use BetterHelp, who could maybe sponsor this podcast. But I do use BetterHelp. I did hear about BetterHelp on podcasts. I heard about it from people, podcasts, and a lot of Instagram ads. I was fine. Like
I've never heard of it, so
We're all gonna get ads
The
now.
algorithm was not pushing anything.
We're all
Right, I
gonna
was
do that.
like, I'm fine. No, but even me saying I'm fine is not a good joke.
It's
So,
fine. No, that's great.
yeah, BetterHelp and Talkspace are like kind of like the Airbnb of therapy. So you pay like a monthly subscription, and then you get, it's actually cheaper in the long run than having like, you know, going to one. So I had a therapist for many years, like probably 7 or 8 years. I have been in a lot of different sort of like support groups and this and that and this courses and all that sort of stuff. And then like initially it started because of some challenges, but then it kind of just became like, oh, I want to improve, and like, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't need to be having a bad week to go to therapy, you know? So now I'm using BetterHelp, which I like, and it's interesting because you can like meet with a therapist, and then if you...
Is it online?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like very techie, like,
Okay.
and then if you didn't vibe with them, you can try another one the next week, and like
Right.
they have group sessions, and
I've been telling my therapist for years I'd like to attend without pants on. And so the fact that you can do this now
you can do that.
is
Wait,
revolutionary.
do you only go in person?
Yeah.
You've never done online with your therapist?
Well, if I don't have to wear pants, I will now.
Right.
That just frees up everything.
Right.
But
And it's nice if you travel too, to keep up your mental health. Like,
Yes,
you know
to
what I
my
mean?
point though. Sorry, do you have a therapist?
I've been working with one on and off over the course
Okay,
of
see, this is the difference
time,
to
yeah.
your point earlier is Gen Z, they're all going to have therapists. And everybody I'm talking to now has therapists. The older generation, they would have never, if you went to a therapist, something was really wrong with you.
That's because they couldn't go on their iPad and WebMD themselves.
Exactly, but I know that people go to therapy now, even if something's not wrong with them, just because to talk. Is whereas
I think that's great.
In the older generation, if you were going to therapist, there was a stigma, I think, that you say, because I think what you're saying about the Gen Z, they are inheriting kind of not a resolution, but a gateway to opportunity to work through their issues, because we have removed this stigma, because we've understood you don't have to talk to a therapist just because something's wrong.
Yeah. And I would call it, accessibility is a hard thing too, because I think like, you know, and that's why I do like BetterHelp, because it is like cheaper in the long run. But yeah, I don't know if everyone because not everyone. I'm being very like wary right now. I'm like, everyone doesn't, and like not everyone can afford it. And anyways, we're on a podcast.
To that point, Rihanna, like I like what you said, just about you don't have to be having a bad week to go to therapy. Same thing as like you don't have to be unhappy with your body at that time to go to the gym. It's like, no, this is about self-care, this is about development, etc. Right? But that point about, is it always that accessible? I was listening to something quite a while ago just talking about how people who are in more of like a survival situation, who their life isn't, it's kind of in shambles. They just don't know that they're actually struggling with mental health because they're in this situation where they don't even have the ability to like think about my mental health. I'm just trying to get food on the table. I'm just trying to get my bills paid. My life is just like a mess, and that's why I'm struggling with mental health. And they actually found that through therapy and stuff like that, they actually were able to help these people with mental health, and that they were able to improve their life situation because they got the help that they needed. But so many people are in these situations that they don't even think that they need help. They just think that the problem is because they have no money, or because they this or this or that, right? Because they're not in a situation where they can even think about, oh yeah, maybe I'm struggling with anxiety. Maybe I'm struggling with this. Maybe I'm struggling with that, because they're too concerned about like just making sure they got bread.
Like
Do you want to know? Do you want to know how much I pay?
Yeah,
I'll tell you right now. I won't say the person's name. I pay. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd.
Okay.
I think $280 an hour,
Wow.
and I will often go for 1 for sure to 2 hour sessions.
That's really expensive. Like
That's
that is.
This is a person who is a specialist with
Oh.
obsessive compulsive disorder, trauma, and
Right.
anxiety. So
Right.
deeper.
And
And they've
now,
been doing it for over 40 years, but it's like to think that your average person is paying between,
I don't
these
think the
amounts,
average person
that's-
is paying that. Just so you know,
what are you paying?
she's on an
What is
app.
that?
No, but I've been to. I mean, that's great for you. I'm happy
Like,
that you have the right person.
There's a
That's
sliding scale.
yeah. That is expensive for the
I
average.
feel like
therapy.
that would be
Somebody
Just-
took the
just so
sliding
you
scale,
know.
took
I
an
just want you to
abacus and
know.
threw it at the wall.
But it's interesting because to your point, one, okay, I want to just diagnose this first, because what you said was there is
dissect.
Pardon?
You meant dissect, not diagnose.
Diagnose? Yeah, whatever. Yeah, dissect. Thank you. Yes, thank you. What am I
another
saying?
D word.
We're not therapists.
We're not therapists. I
Could be
know
though.
that. But what you said is people, and I think this is maybe the older generation, I might be generalizing, but they were working hard for their families and they're like, I don't have time to think about me. I've just got to take care of my kids and all that. And then they're breaking down inside, and they're, because it's stress, financial stress. But then you're saying, not everyone can afford it. So maybe that is a barrier for people. And then what you're saying is, you're paying premium because you're recognizing
because you didn't know.
It's no, but
I knew it was expensive.
No,
Let me
but
tell
you're
you
like,
that.
but it's worth it, and you'll do whatever it takes because you desperately need it to the point where you'll sacrifice something else. So I think that this is an interesting perspective because we're all either getting help or not getting help based on maybe some income barriers as well.
Yep, that's massive.
Yeah, like it's culture, and like, yeah, in this topic I kind of want to be careful to speak to more of my experience, some observations, but I don't want to yes, barriers for various reasons, whether it's living demographic, ethnic demographic, historical demographic, cultural, like there's so many reasons.
I mean, maybe, okay, let's go here. Like we want to get vulnerable, real. Jay, you're paying $280 an hour. You could pay me, I'll listen to you. But why? Like, maybe tell the listeners your story, your journey. What took you there, and how is it going, and where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, everyone's story is different, and
Right.
and for me, suicide is prevalent in my family, and that's a pretty bold statement to make. My older brother took his own life. My uncle took his own life. My grandfather's brother took his own life. In every generation, I have cousins that have taken their life. Every generation that I can find up the line, somebody has taken their life. And so my siblings and I and my cousins had a verbal conversation where we said, it stops. It's done. We're not doing this any further. And so do I think everyone has anxiety? I think people experience anxieties or depression or whatever that may be. The thing is now is like depression was this thing before. It was like, oh, you're just sad or, whatever. You can take a brain scan and physically look at it. It's not up for debate. It's not a question. It's your brain looks like this and your brain looks like this. They do not match. I can physically visualize that you have depression. And so that changes the game in a lot of context, I think. For me, growing up, I had a very interesting upbringing. I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder when I was very, very young. That started when I was 8 years old, was medicated. I used to wash my hands.
You were medicated at 8.
I used to wash my hands like up to 200 times a day in the coldest water that I could find. And what happens is my skin would get so dry, like my knuckles would start cracking and bleeding. And it was just a friggin' mess. But again, you could go so deep on this. Did I grow out of that? To a certain extent, yeah. Am I a highly functioning human? Absolutely. But it was with the help of medication. It was with the help of counselors. It was with the help of therapists. When I was going through school, I was coded for everything. Like, oh, this kid has anxiety. This kid has ADHD. This kid's, all these things. Funnily enough, I kind of figured out the system, and I was like, oh, if I tell you I have this, then you'll write my test for me. Go for it, dummy. Like I kind of understood what was going on. But I think there is still a big stigma around it. Number one. Number two, I think, and this is just my perspective, I don't know if this is true or not. I have no facts to back this up. But when our parents were growing up, like they didn't have so many things coming at them at once. They didn't have access to things coming at them once. This thing happens to the world. This thing happens to the world. This thing happens to the world. You have to say something. Oh, you didn't say something? You're a piece of garbage.
Right.
This thing happens. This thing happens. This thing happens. What's your statement on this? This happens. What are you doing about this? Why didn't you do anything about that? It's like bam, 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 all the time. And the other thing is that there are addiction psychologists that work around social platforms 24/7 to make sure you stay on that platform.
Right.
And so whether that's clickbait or whether that's whatever it is, you're on it, you're enthralled, and you go deeper and deeper and further and further and further. Whereas, when our parents were growing up, like they had 8 channels.
Yeah, and
my dad talks about having to turn the
newspaper
the
and
channel
that
with
was
a tweezer or with the pliers.
Right? You had to really hate something to change the channel.
Right.
You're like, now I got to get up and go and change the channel.
Fully.
Right.
And so.
But you're saying something.
That's a big point.
this is crazy. 8 years old, you're washing your hands, you're getting medicated. I don't want to skip past it. Your brother, you say, committed suicide. How old were you at that time?
I was 16 when that happened.
You were 16.
Yeah. And you could go there. I have no.
What
fear
was your
talking about these things.
state pre him doing that? What was your relationship to him? Were you still in like washing hands mode? Like, where were you at, and how did that trigger you to send you to a new place? Like, how did that intensify your journey mentally?
I think so. When he had passed, I was 16. I was in grade 11, going into grade 12. He was a recovering crack cocaine addict. He had an issue with addiction. He started smoking dope when he was in grade 5, and then things just progressed from there. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with like cannabis or anything like that. I'm saying that is what happened. And so he dealt with depression, and depression was something that, again, just runs in our family. I don't know why. I'm a firm believer in epigenetics. If you're not familiar with that, it's essentially intergenerational trauma. They've proven that it exists. You can Google that yourself and go into it. Myself, I played music at the time, and I think that one of the benefits of ADHD is that you can hyper focus on something, and I hyper focus on things, on whatever it is that I want to do. And so when he passed, and even in leading up to it, because I didn't have to think about anything, I could just play drums all the time. And it's great if you have OCD. It's another thing that's so great, because everything's based on perfection. Everything's based on numbers. So I found outlets that worked for me, whether I knew it at the time or not. That was something that I was dealing with. The interesting thing about all this stuff is that when medication gets involved, and I'm a proponent of it, I currently take Vyvanse, and I personally take Wellbutrin. One is for anxiety, and one is for ADHD, and a mix for depression. I don't take anything for obsessive compulsive disorder anymore. Again, it's one of those things where you kind of look at it. I remember if I touched something under the chair on my desk at school, like a piece of gum, I literally thought I was going to die. Like you could not convince me that I was not going to die unless I immediately stood up and went straight to go wash my hands. And I would wash my hands 30 times over and over and over again. And when you look back at it, you're like, you're a crazy person. That's so absurd. I had a chemical imbalance in my brain for whatever reason. I do not know. We know each other now. I'm a thriving human. I have great relationships. I have a business that's growing very quickly. That's very successful. If I choose to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm pretty stubborn in that way. But these things, there's stuff that everyone goes through, and nobody talks about it. They just see your highlight reel on Instagram and go, oh, look how easy his life is. Look how easy that person's, whatever it is. So.
And on the, I guess, and I will say this, it's interesting. This, like, the things that we're talking about on this podcast are not uncomfortable to me, but I see my body language, or my body is telling me that I'm like more uncomfortable, which makes sense, I guess, talking on a public platform. Something that has helped me is somatics, by the way. Somatics, like helping you learn to listen to your body. But as you're sharing, you're right. Like the stigma, because I'm thinking back to, and like appreciate you sharing, so candidly, thinking back to 2017, where, so I used to do these events called People Are Pearls, and Jay was one of the speakers at one of the events, and he shared like quite openly and candidly about anxiety and about this experience, which is also like personally in this context, I know you've shared publicly. So I'm like, I feel comfortable knowing that you're open to that. Right. And like, I'm thinking that was only in 2017, I guess, to like kind of correct myself. That wasn't that long ago. And I remember it feeling like this is a really big deal. And like, wow, that this person and this man with tattoos who looks all tough and buff is talking about this stuff really matters. And that was only in 2017, So I guess to like affirm you doing that, and to kind of, I just want to verbally affirm, like, there is still stigma. You're right. And even for myself, I have ADHD. I'm a neurodiverse woman. This is my first time ever saying that documented in a place that's going to go on the internet. And that's wild, because a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have been terrified of the stigma. Like, ADHD is a brain disorder. It is a thing that affects my life. It's a real thing. And I only got diagnosed in January 2020, and I was so like, I'm only telling a few people. I can't tell I don't want to tell these. I don't want to tell my boss, who's public about having ADHD. Like, I don't want to tell these people.
I remember when you told me, I was like, yeah, I know.
Because
What was your why?
Kayla's
Why
birthday.
did you get tested? Like,
oh man, because and actually this is, and I do want to verbally say I do feel a little weird like talking about these things, and now but I'm like, we're in a podcast, I guess we're gonna keep the convo moving, but it does feel weird to me to be like, this happened, your brother, and now we're just, you know what I mean? Like,
Can I just say something though? Like
weird.
in the context of conversation,
yeah,
if more people don't just freaking talk about it,
Totally.
like
Right.
just talk about it.
totally.
You know,
Yeah.
Sometimes I talk about it and I cry. Sometimes I talk
Yeah.
about it and I don't at all. It's just dry wall. And the biggest thing with any of these things, any of these diagnoses, oh my gosh,
diagnoses,
thank you,
zebra,
thank you,
mice,
thank
moose,
you, Rihanna.
Pizza.
Moosin.
I can't say the word.
areia. No, I'm just kidding.
This diagnosis doesn't own you, right? You so if the doctor says, Scott, you have depression, you're not depression.
Right.
You are facing depression. You might have depression. You might have ADHD. I don't go, you're ADHD. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like you don't own these
You
things.
are not that.
Yeah.
No. There's so much. There is so much more to you.
Yes. We're going in
Than
here.
that.
I like this. I'm riding your wave. My brain is now, I'm like, yes. Because, because, so women, and if I'm saying any facts wrong, y'all, I'm just an artist. I write songs and produce events. If I'm saying anything
Right.
wrong, just correct it on the text and the screen. But women are underdiagnosed for ADHD. They're diagnosed later in life, and it's missed a lot of the time. Boys are diagnosed younger, and also I believe people of color would be misdiagnosed or not diagnosed as well for a lot of things. So I'm a woman of color, so and honestly, like as I've worked through my own ADHD journey, I've had, there's been a lot of tears, and I've felt very sad because I wish someone would have noticed. I wish there's just, in hindsight, there's so many things that break my heart for young me, that like if someone had noticed, why does she keep missing the bus? Like, she's 9, you know what I mean? Like, that makes me really sad. There's a lot of stuff like that, and I'm not blaming anyone or institution or whoever. It's just like, it's hard to look back. And so yes, it is important to talk about. Like, I want to say on this podcast, I am a person, I'm a woman, I'm a ambitious, successful curator and entrepreneur and artist, and I'm neurodiverse. And like, that's something I'm very passionate about now, because I felt so isolated, because when I was diagnosed, I don't know if I knew any other women who had it. Like, that was only 2 years ago. So I felt, I don't know any other women, I don't know any women of color. Okay, so I talked to some of my guy friends, and then I told one of my women, she said, oh, me too. And I didn't, and then it kept going and going, and I'm like, and to now, some of my friends and I, we joke, because like my one friend, she's like, do I have ADHD? And I'm like, are you asking my opinion? Yeah. Yes, you seemed, you know what I mean? Because it's less isolating. So like, yeah, I guess if you are listening to this and you are a person, but I can speak as a woman or a woman of color, and you're wondering, like, you don't have to be scared. Like, go get a proper psychiatrist evaluation if possible, because there are also people that will just be like, yeah, and they don't actually take the time. But it's been so healing and so freeing, because you know what? When I got diagnosed, I was able to access a course at the Can Learn Society in Calgary for adults with ADHD. And then I sat around a table with other people who had ADHD, who were diagnosed as adults. And it's literally like, I could cry. I feel so much freer in my brain. I know how my brain works. I know what my brain doesn't like, and I can feel empowered in that. And some of my challenges that I used to think were just something wrong with me, which are very valid and hard things. I'm not saying like they're okay, but I know now, I'm like, not to make excuses, just like, I have a brain disorder that affects this thing. And if you cannot accept that imperfection or that one part of me, then like, I don't feel bad anymore. It's just like, I'm doing my best. You know what I mean?
I think disorder has to get removed.
But it
from
is.
that statement.
But it is.
It's
though.
my greatest superpower.
It's part of me.
For me, it's my greatest superpower.
But
if you can learn how to,
Yeah.
I'm not at all trying to take away from what you're saying, but if you were to think like evolutionary from that perspective, you know, if this was 1,000 years ago and there was an animal in the bushes and you're the only one that noticed it because you were able to attend to everything around you at once, and so you move and the other person doesn't, they're dead, you're alive. That's a great power to have. And it goes so much further than that. I'm just saying, like, if you know, if somebody's listening to this and
right.
the emphasis on the word disorder, and
Right.
I'm not taking away from what you're saying. I'm just disagreeing, and I don't think should be labeled so strongly as a disorder. And I think also if you're listening to this and you don't have, you know, anxiety or ADHD or any of these things, and you're just like, oh, I'm so sick of people talking about this. This is the only thing people talk about now. Be here to get a look into our lives, because when you create a safe space for somebody who has one of these things or all of these things, it's incredible what you can do. My business partner, Mark, we joke about it all the time. He's like, I don't have anxiety. I'm like, I honestly know that you don't. And it's incredible. But he listens, he's patient, and he understands, and he emphasizes the positives of these things. And he's a great person. He's just like, as a man, as a friend, as a brother, business partner in my life, he has facilitated more safe space than he understands. You know, where sometimes he's like, dude, you're going to take a break now. We'll come back to this in 20 minutes. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you. You know, we'll talk through something and we're like, wow, I made that a really big deal. That just did not need to happen. Also, sorry, Mark, I didn't take my Vyvanse this morning.
Right. Yes, I hear you. Two things on that. One, I think it's important to recognize both sides of the coin, not to be like, oh, both, like for real. Like, yes, for me now, there are things about ADHD and knowing that I have it that I feel so empowered by. And I do, like, yeah, the superpower, the hyperfocus. The hyperfocus is wild, you guys. It is like, and so I'm not medicated, which is interesting because I tried medication. It didn't work for me. For me personally, I kept detailed notes. It changed my personality. I didn't like it. So then I was really hopeless. I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I can't, you know what I mean? So the hyperfocus is amazing. The challenges are real. And something, yes, I appreciate you not discounting me and saying this. I'm going to do the same thing. You've known you've had ADHD for a while, right? So that's part of the thing too, is like the longer you've known you've had something, like when I first got diagnosed, I was like, oh my gosh, right? Now that I've known for 2.5 years, I feel more empowered. So that's just part of, I think, a lot of the young little boys, little girls things. Like if you've known you've had ADHD since you were 8, like doesn't mean that you didn't have struggles, but by this age, you're able to find your lane. And I didn't even know until, you know what I mean? So now it's impacted my career in like, I think cool ways, and being like, I don't like doing that. I'm not gonna, like, my brain literally will exit the chat. Like I can't, not that I can't, but I'm just like, it encourages me to lean more into my passions and like things I'm good at. So anyways, ADHDers talked and took over the convo.
Yeah.
Wait,
No,
Here we are.
This is good. Me and Levi.
I'm like, here's how you know Levi doesn't have it.
What I would say about all that is just like, it's kind of cool because you can't fight what you can't see. Right. So then having that awareness is fantastic because now you actually can put words to it. You can put a name to it. And then also it's like, now I always find a lot of times people our kryptonite is often attached to our superpower. It's too, like, and it's kind of like how you are choosing how are you going to look at this? Because you can either look at it as your kryptonite or you can look at it as your superpower. So
or both when grounded,
because it's going sometimes it's going to inhibit you, and sometimes it's going to make you a lot more effective in certain situations than other people. And trying to understand the difference between those things. But it's really, really cool when people are getting diagnosed, people are having that awareness and are having these conversations, because it's super, super important, because you gotta know, like, that awareness is going to change your life, or else you just go around thinking like there's something wrong with you. Right.
We're going to keep talking about this. This is a great conversation. We're coming back for part 2, and we're going to keep digging into this and overcoming, talking about it. How do you overcome and move past this? But this is a great conversation, so stick around for more. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to hit like and subscribe. You can enjoy the audio version of this podcast wherever you consume your podcasts. We'll see you soon.